achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. I'm your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're taking a look at the upcoming UFC 172 event. Before we get into that, I want to quickly recap UFC on Fox 11 and how big of an idiot Dana White is. Overall, I went 8-5. I had a great start, a weak finish, hit a nice upset with Donald Cerrone, but my bet pack didn't do very well at all. But I hit a key fight here or there, and it produces massively. So either way, we're headed back in the right direction. But all that aside, Dana White, you are an absolute piece of shit. Fabricio Verdum goes into the main event as a massive underdog, takes on a 6'7" ass-kicking machine in Travis Browne, and beats him pillar to post when no one was, or not many was giving him a chance. Certainly not myself. He's a very good fighter, very good on the ground, very good striker. But most people had Browne beating him, most likely knocking him out. And Fabricio Verdum took it to him and beat him up. And what does the bald-headed wonder say after the fight is over? I thought Fabricio Verdum fought a safe fight. Well, I don't know what to say to that. How about you get in there and get your ass beat? Ask Travis Browne how safe that fight was, because Travis Browne got beat badly. Fabricio landed a ton of good shots on the feet, took him down on the ground, did some damage on the ground, threatened him a couple times. Sure, he didn't finish him. That's a testament to how tough Travis Browne is, not how safe a fight Fabricio Verdum fought. But, as far as I'm concerned, up 3 rounds like that, I'd fight a safe fight too, because you get a title shot in the horizon. You don't want to blow it and get, have a flash knockout come, because Travis Browne was still dangerous late in that fight, even though he was tired, or injure yourself and have something, ridiculous prevent you from getting that shot. We've seen plenty of guys earn title shots or be on the cusp of title shots and have something unfortunate happen and it prevents them in the future. For Dana White, it's really easy to sit at cage side and make these comments, because you're pretty much, in most situations, you're fine no matter who wins the fight. But for these guys, it's their career, it's their livelihood. So when they have an opportunity to get a title shot and they don't want to, push it out, lose it because some guy after the fight's gonna say, I felt so-and-so who got in the cage and beat the shit out of another guy and got himself, punched in the face several times, fought a safe fight. Dana, get real. I'm trying to remain, either way, Dana White's an idiot. We're well aware of all the things he says. He does a lot of great things in the sport, and I really appreciate some of the stuff he does, but shut your mouth sometimes when this stuff comes up. Have your opinions, but you don't have to share it. They're like assholes, and you are certainly one of them. Now, on this prediction, main card, I've got 5 main card predictions for UFC 172 I'm going to send your way. I've been babbling on now to the intro. It's twice as long as it usually is. Either way, let's get to my first prediction of the night. Our opening fight of the night takes place in the UFC's featherweight division as Max Blessed Holloway, 8-3-0, battles Andre Touchy Fili, 13-1-0. Now, coming into this bout, this is Fili's second UFC appearance. First was on short notice. He took the fight on 10 days and looked very good. For Max Holloway, very young fighter, this will be the 8th time he's stepped inside of the octagon. It feels like only yesterday he battled Dustin Poirier in short notice. And he's had some good competition, the aforementioned Poirier. He's also fought Conor McGregor and Dennis Bermudez and a number of other guys, so he's got a lot of good experience despite his young age. Both men are very lanky fighters for featherweights, 5'11". Fili surprisingly is going to have a 3.5-inch reach advantage. And it'll be interesting to see if that disrupts Holloway, considering he usually is the lankier and longer fighter. We'll see if he has to deal and make any adjustments to deal with that. Both fighters are primarily strikers. Max just 3 wins by knockout, but 2 have come in the UFC. He's more of a knockout by accumulation guy. We don't see a lot of one-punch knockouts from this dude. He's very measured and calculated, picks his shots very well, uses a lot of good movement, 5.58 strikes landed per minute. He does give up a number of strikes at 3.94, but still he does a nice job of outlanding his opponents and outworking them. He sets up his attacks very well. Lots of feints and fakes, good footwork, changes angles, lots of variety in what he throws. He never does the same thing twice, it seems, which keeps his opponents guessing. Excellent combinations, very good hands overall. Throws some knees, elbows, spinning attacks to mix things up a little bit. He can do damage along the cage. We saw him stop some guys in there. He needs to maintain pace, though, and not get outworked when he is trying to measure Fili in this fight. Now, Andre Fili, 7 wins by knockout overall, including his debut against Jeremy Larson. He throws very hard, much harder than Max Holloway does. He should have the power advantage based on what we've seen. He has a very high work rate, lands a lot of shots, and then likes to swarm his opponent, trying to overwhelm them after he hurts them. Very good knees. We saw that along the cage in the last bout. Throws some nice body kicks. Did a lot of damage, I said, in close, in tight, when he pinned Larson along the cage and started unloading on him. Now, one thing, though, he landed some big shots on Larson, and he really was never able to recover, so he got off to a good start and put Larson behind and just kept mounting the damage up on him until he could not overcome it. Now, he did have some trouble in his final pre-UFC bout, if you go back to some of his other footage. He eventually won the fight by knockout, but he was really getting smacked around and getting caught with a jab several times, and he's got to watch that against Max Holloway, who's the type of guy who will flash that jab out there and let you run into it. and keep you at distance as a result. Now, Jeremy Larson, when he fought Fili, he landed some very big shots of his own, and the forward aggression that Fili likes to use leaves him open to be hit and to be countered, and Larson was having a little bit of success there. Now, keep in mind here, Fili is a Team Alpha Male product. We didn't see a lot of wrestling in his debut, if any. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember if we saw any attempts to take him down. He could look to do that against Max Holloway, who has had some trouble in the past. Conor McGregor took him down. Overall, Fili does have 3 wins by submission. Now, Holloway represents a very big step up in competition for Fili. He's very seasoned and constantly shows improvement each time out, and I expect to see that more here. Fili could be better with a full camp and proper preparation heading into this matchup, but probably looked very good in his debut simply because his opponent was not that high quality, not that high caliber. That won't be the case here. This is a big fight under the lights for Fili. Much more pressure for him to perform and put a good performance together. Something that Max Holloway's been doing for a couple years now. Max likes to pick his spots, will keep Fili at a distance, uses movement and feints to shut down that aggression. And my prediction is Max Holloway to defeat Andre Fili by decision. The next prediction comes to us in the UFC's lightweight division. The number 9th ranked Jim Miller, 23-4-0 with 1 no contest. Battles late injury replacement 10-1 Yancy Medeiros. Now, Medeiros is stepping up to replace Bobby Green on very short notice, literally a week, or a little bit less than a week actually, out from the fights, and Medeiros stepping up with Bobby Green going down with an injury. Now, this is a big opportunity for Yancy, taking on a high-ranked, top 10-ranked vet, and a chance to really make his mark. He's coming off what was a win over Eve Edwards, overturned for no contest after he tested positive for marijuana. Certainly a step up. 1 week notice for both guys to prepare for this fight. For Miller, he was preparing for a pretty talented, pretty good striker in Green, so not a huge change for Medeiros. A big step up from Joe Ellenberger. That's certainly his preliminary card opponent he was preparing to face. Now, for Miller, he's a veteran looking to hold on to that top 10 spot. He looked very good in his last fight. He's never got a shot at the title. He's come very close, and he's desperately trying to hold on to whatever, relevance he has in the division and see if he can work his way back up. Now, Medeiros is going to come in with a 6-inch reach advantage and a 2-inch height advantage. The guy formerly fought at middleweight, which is absolutely ridiculous, seeing him drop all the way down. Now, looking at Miller, he's a well-known commodity, very talented grappler, wrestling background, BJJ black belt. He's coming off a submission win over BJJ black belt for Fabricio Camoys. He also tapped out Charles Oliveira, which is not an easy thing to do. 5 UFC subs altogether, very dangerous on the mat. Wrestling-wise, he averages 2.02 takedowns at 47%, so not huge numbers, but he often only needs one opportunity to get the fight to the mat to take control of the matchup. Very aggressive in pursuit of the submission, almost to a fault. We saw him, dominate Pat Healy, but he continued to push and eventually get exhausted himself. We also, against Benson Henderson, gave up position many times and looking for submissions and could not score it. He also has some very vicious ground and pound, which we saw against Joe Lozon, which I expect him to employ here when the opportunity shows itself. Now, for Medeiros, he hasn't shown a ton of offensive grappling, just 1 submission win in his career. Held his own against Rustam Habilov early in that fight, but Habilov eventually suplexed him. We all know the dislocated finger or thumb situation there, which wasn't pleasant. From what I've seen, he's going to be overmatched on the ground if he cannot prevent Jim Miller from taking him down. He needs to keep this fight standing. Now, Medeiros, he has shown some solid technique with his striking. He has power 6 knockouts, including the KO over Eve Edwards, which obviously has been reversed, so it's not included in those 6 knockouts. 1 big shot, he landed a very nice little punch that put him out. He's a rangy striker, throws some decent combinations, nice front kick to the body, which can be an effective tool to back a guy off and catch him as he tries to come forward. He stopped Edwards with a clipping left hook as he came in a little exchange. It shows he can punch at distance, or he can do damage in short range as well. Against Edwards, he was inviting him in, and he took some decent shots. He was kind of saying, come on, let's throw down. That's something he doesn't want to do with Jim Miller, but at the same time, he was having success slipping some punches and landing some of his own, so that could be part of his strategy here to try and take advantage of Miller's over-aggression. As I said, Miller, just like on the ground, he's very aggressive on the feet. He likes to outwork guys. He's a pretty solid chin, isn't afraid to come forward and exchange shot for shot. Melvin Gillard, that flying knee hit on him was absolutely ridiculous, and he took it, ate it, and kept right on going. Only 3 knockout wins, but he still has very good power, and brutal striking assault was in the fight against Joe Lozon. He went after him. Those level trajectory elbows were vicious. Decent combinations, very fast with his striking. Maybe takes a little bit too much damage. His strikes landed versus strikes absorbed, quote, it's very close. He's still coming out on top, but just, barely. Other than the Nate Diaz submitting Miller, the only guys that have had success against him were big, strong wrestlers like Gray Maynard, Pat Healy, and Benson Henderson. That's really not Yancy's style here. Miller's a major step up for Medeiros. I cannot blame the guy for taking the opportunity. I just don't see it working out too well for him. It could be much closer if Miller cannot get inside and get this fight to the ground, or if Yancy can hurt him early. Either way, my prediction is Jim Miller to defeat Yancy Medeiros by submission. At the midway mark of the main card, we're in the UFC's middleweight division. Is number 5 ranked and former Strikeforce middleweight champion Luke Rockhold, 11-2-0. Battles the number 12 ranked Tim the Barbarian Boetsch with a record of 17-6-0. Now, by the books, Boetsch is a massive underdog coming into this matchup. Really hasn't looked that great of late, but he is a huge underdog. So much so we, something like see George St. Pierre against some of his opponents in the past. Just unbelievable the odds have him at. But you look at what he's done recently. Controversial win against CB Holloway, dominated by Mark Munoz, stopped by Costa Philippou, controversial win against Hector Lombard, and a come from behind win against Yushin Okami where he was absolutely lit up until the end of the fight. So he really has not put together a full performance in a long time. Now Rockhold, he came back after a lengthy layoff and a brutal debut knockout against Vitor Belfort, and he looked very good in a short fight against Costa Philippou, eventually finishing him with a solid body shot that put him down. Physically, Boetsch is very strong. He's the thicker fighter, but Rockhold has 3 inches of height, and he's going to have 3 inches of reach as well, so he's the lankier guy and should be able to keep Boetsch on the outside. First big number that stands out to me is the strikes landed versus strikes absorbed trade-off. Boetsch lands 2.79 strikes while giving up 2.68, so almost even. So he almost gets hit as much as he hits, and that's not a good thing, even though he does have some power. For Luke Rockhold, much better management of these statistics. 3.38 strikes landed per minute versus just 1.69 strikes absorbed. So he hits more than Boetsch hits, and he gives up less than Boetsch gives up. And if this fight goes the distance, that will show up massively. Now Rockhold's a much more varied striker. He's faster and he has better conditioning than Tim Boetsch. So you're starting to see where these odds are coming from as far as Luke Rockhold being the favorite. Boetsch, though, he has power. He throws some nice kicks. I really like that front kick he throws and flashes out to keep guys at distance. But for the way I look at it, he's going to struggle to keep up with Luke Rockhold on the feet, and he tends to slow down later in fights, and that's where Luke Rockhold expect to see Rockhold get simply stronger in those situations and start to pull away. Boetsch, he could look to take it to the ground. He was a collegiate wrestler. He had some nice throws against Nick Ring. Very impressive. He did score a couple of takedowns against Costa Philippou and was having success early before a couple of unfortunate events and injuries took place in that matchup. But Rockhold's a very good grappler in his own right. 80% takedown defense. He's very hard to take off his feet. He's a BJJ black belt. Excellent grappler. 6 submission wins overall. And I think Tim Boetsch is going to be in trouble looking to have success offensively, especially as the fight progresses. Now, Boetsch, he hasn't done well overall against solid wrestlers. His last 2 opponents have taken him down a combination 8 times, so we could see Luke Rockhold look to take him to the ground. I don't really anticipate it, but it certainly won't be out of the question. Boetsch has struggled since he's got pushed up the ranks and started taking on next-level competition, which Luke Rockhold certainly represents. Rockhold simply has more to offer in this fight. He needs to respect Boetsch's power and his durability, but my prediction is Luke Rockhold to defeat Tim Boetsch by TKO. In our co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's light heavyweight division. It's the number 4 ranked Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis, 12-1-0 with 1 no contest, takes on the returning number 14 ranked Anthony Rumble Johnson, 16-4-0. It's almost comical as on the UFC site, they have Anthony Johnson's picture from when he fought as a welterweight standing next to Phil Davis, and that just reminds you what we were at not that long ago. Now, this is Johnson. He's back in the UFC since for the first time since January 2012, where he lost to Vitor Belfort fighting at 195-pound catchweight. His weight-cutting issues have been well documented. Not really an issue since he's gone to light heavyweight, but no, the fight before he fought Charlie Brenneman at welterweight, so it shows you where he has come physically and the changes he has made. 6 straight wins since leaving the UFC, including a win over heavyweight over Andrei Arlovsky, where he looked very impressive. Big step up in competition for Rumble, though, compared to the other guys he's fought. Most recently, DJ Linderman and Mike Kyle, he both put away in brutal fashion. Now, Davis, almost a year layoff. He's trying to gain some respect in the division. He'll have to, put up a good performance to do that here. Dana White has questioned some of his drive to win a title. Again, Dana White questioning fighters, have to always enjoy that. Not even in talk for a title shot, despite the fact he's ranked number 4, coming off a win over Lyoto Machida, a little bit questionable, but still the guy's impressive. He's only lost to Rashad Evans. Though, with Davis, besides Machida, not really top-level competition. He's fought late, fighting Vagner Prado twice and Vinny Magalesh, beating them both in the no contest. So certainly hasn't been fighting top guys, between the Evans loss and the Machida victory. Johnson striking... what this fight comes down to really is Rumble Johnson striking against Phil Davis's wrestling. Both are competent elsewhere, but this is really the matchup we're going to see that will decide this fight. Davis is an accomplished NCAA Division I wrestler, very impressive credentials. BJJ purple belt, 2.67 takedowns at 47%. He has a smothering top game. He's very hard to buck off once he gets there. He sets up his takedowns extremely well, changes levels very quickly, throws strikes to set them up. Hard shot, he's very strong, and he works very hard to put guys on the mat. Competent and improving submission game. 4 submission wins over on his career, but 3 in the UFC, and have come recently. He's showing how dangerous he is, and if you can combine that with his wrestling game, he could be a real threat here in the not too distant future. Only loss, they said, to Rashad Evans, where he couldn't consistently get his wrestling going. Now you look at Rumble Johnson, junior college champ, so he's no slouch either. 3.17 takedowns at 60%, 75% takedown D, but these numbers are coming from his time spent at welterweight, and he's more striking based now. He really hasn't faced a super good wrestler at light heavyweights, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But he's 0-3 in fights ended by submission, so there clearly is a vulnerability there. Now, on the feet, Johnson's striking has massive power, 11 knockouts. We saw him hurt Andrei Arlovski very badly in that fight, broke some of his teeth. I believe he broke his jaw, if I'm not mistaken. Very aggressive, throws hard combinations, really likes those big kicks to the body, the legs, to the head, always threatening to knock out with one punch, and Davis will have to respect that. Now, Davis has vastly improved his striking game. He is, his strongest techniques are his kicks to the leg and body and head. Very elusive, lots of movement on the feet. He made it hard for a guy who's a very good striker in Lyoto Machida to land and to zero in and find a place to attack. He did a good job limiting there. He limits his opponents to 1.16 strikes landed per minute, which is a big number there. Now, Davis did struggle with Rashad Evans. He couldn't get in range for striking or for wrestling, and that's something that came down to the elusiveness of Rashad. That's not going to be something here. Johnson's going to be there to attack. Can Johnson have a similar impact otherwise? I really don't think so. Davis's movement will make it very hard for Johnson to land. He still needs to be very careful, but I think he'll be able to avoid it. Davis will counter Johnson's aggressive forward push with a double leg takedown. Change levels, take him down. Cardio will also play a big role here, and the combo of Johnson chasing and spending time on his back is going to slow him down significantly as this fight progresses. I think Davis will focus on maintaining position over submission to avoid standing up and having to strike with Rumble Johnson. He has to be very careful, and I was very close to taking Anthony Johnson by knockout, and it wouldn't shock me if it happened, but my prediction is Phil Davis to defeat Anthony Johnson. I'll say Phil Davis wins this fight by decision. It's now time for the main event prediction of the evening as the champion, Jon Bones Jones, 19-1-0, puts his UFC light heavyweight strap on the line against 22-2-0, the number 2 ranked fighter in the division, Glover Teixeira. Now, coming into this matchup, this is the first fight for Johnson after that Alexander Gustafsson war, and that should prove as a learning and growing experience for a very young and talented champion. Massive step up in competition for Jones is what Gus represented and what Teixeira represents here as well. He had fought some older guys prior to that, former champions and undersized opponents in like Shogun, Rampage, Vitor, Sun, and Lyoto Machida. And Rashad Evans was the exception, maybe a little bit undersized, but that was a big step up for Gus and for Jones, and it was a much closer fight. But the same can be said for Teixeira here, as he's fought guys like Rampage Jackson, Fabio Maldonado, Kyle Kingsbury. His most accomplished wins were over Ryan Bader and James Tahuna, who aren't exactly tearing up the rankings. So a big fight for Glover nonetheless, as far as competition is concerned. Physical advantage for Jones, we always talk about it, but they're not nearly as big in this fight. Only 2 inches of height, 8.5 inches of reach, so it's still significant, but it's not those 12, 14 inches that he's had over some guys. Now, Teixeira could be the most complete fighter that Johnny Jones has faced yet in his career. He's a BJJ black belt with good boxing and serious knockout power, one-punch knockout power. Glover, 13 wins by knockout, including Ryan Bader and Fabio Maldonado, 5.63 strikes landed per minute versus just 2.12 strikes absorbed, so he really puts a beating on his opponents and doesn't give up a lot in exchange. Against Rampage, he took it to Rampage, but he couldn't finish him. He throws solid combinations, decent kicks, but relies more on his boxing. So again, not finishing Rampage. Rampage is tough, but it showed Glover can still win a fight without knocking a guy out, and that's very important. Now, he comes forward, he likes to throw, he can be hit. Bader tagged him with a couple good shots and kind of stunned him. Maldonado wobbled him. And, the biggest thing is Glover's willing to exchange based on the power quotient. He figures, if I hit you and you hit me, you're going to be in more trouble than I'm going to be, and that's what he's banking on here. The big question is, though, can he close the distance and land with regularity against Jon Jones? Jones absorbs 1.89 strikes landed per minute, which is a great, very low number, but that number's come up since the Gus fight. Alexander Gustafsson landed 114 strikes, which is one less than the last 9 guys that Jon Jones has faced together. They've combined for 115 strikes. That's how close or how effective Alexander Gustafsson was in that matchup. Now the reach, Jon Jones, we know how well he uses reach. It's well documented. He keeps that hand extended, which really forces his opponent to have to deal with cutting in and having something constantly in his face. He throws some nice long kicks, nice solid ranging punches. He will open up some spinning attacks. The guy knows how to fight at distance, but he can also fight in close. But I'll get to that in a moment. He doesn't have that one punch power. Keep that in mind here. He hits hard, but he doesn't come, his knockouts more come from accumulation of damage, like we saw against Shogun, like we saw against Chael. When he just opens up and starts throwing down on guys, he's not going to knock him out with just one big strike. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not as likely. Now, when he fought Lyoto Machida, he was struggling with the fact that Machida had no problem with the distance. The same thing was with Gus's ability to cover distance that really gave Jon Jones some trouble. He excels when fighters cannot get inside, which isn't a stretch to really believe that. Now, when he fought Lyoto, he had to change his approach, get in close, use that Greco-Roman background, tie up. He eventually submitted Machida, landed some big shots in tight leading up to it, and that's something he had to do. Will that have to be an issue here? Johnny Jones could also try and score takedowns in this matchup. 2.45 takedowns at a 51% clip. He has brutal ground and pound and submissions from the top position. We saw he catch Vitor. It was Americana or a paintbrush. Either way, he's very versed in the submission game and very capable. The only thing is, Glover, 100% takedown defense, which, it could be tough to take him down, because even if you do take him down, he's a dangerous BJJ black belt. 3.9 takedowns at 63% offensively, so he's very good there. We saw him land 5 takedowns against Rampage. The guy's offensively and defensively very sound, but again, he hasn't fought a guy like John Jones before. So it's the chicken or the egg. Is he just that good, or is it just he hasn't been tested yet? Either way, Jones has been simply unreal in his run as champion. First real test was against Rashad Evans, but I felt that fight was impacted by their rivalry and neither guy really wanting to make a mistake, and Johnny Jones got the best of it. Next was against Gustafsson, a very good fight. A lot of people felt Gustafsson did enough, certainly enough to warrant a very quick rematch, which should be on the docket after this fight. Now we have Glover Teixeira. He's very hungry, dangerous, he's multidimensional, and he sees that John Jones is not, unbeatable. He sees that this guy can be hurt. He sees that this guy can be hit. Now, Jones was able to battle back in the last fight, showed a lot of heart, showed a lot of durability, came back where a lot of people thought he might fold up because he hasn't taken that damage, but he also showed some weaknesses, and I think that's something that's going to be weighing on his mind in this fight. Glover hits much harder than Gus. Yes, he's not as big as Gus, but I really like the way Glover closes distance. He gets in, he lands his shots. He's a confident fighter. He's a strong fighter. I think he's going to be able to land some big shots, and I'm calling the upset. I'm calling Glover Teixeira to defeat John Jones, and I'm saying Teixeira will be the new champion. He's going to do it by TKO. So those are my predictions for UFC 172. I know I'm going to take a lot of heat for picking Glover Teixeira, and I'm going to have half the crowd's going to say, oh, you're just an idiot and picking a guy who has no chance of winning. The other half of the crowd is going to say, you're just throwing lunch meat at the wall and hoping something sticks, and that's all it's coming down to. Either way, I see a lot of things I think Glover can capitalize on. John Jones is a very good fighter, but he's certainly human and very beatable, and I think this is a bad matchup for him, the way Glover comes forward and doesn't really seem to give as much of a care as other guys did about getting hit and coming forward. Either way, that's my picks. Deal with it. The bet packs will be for sale. All the other predictors, including Ryan Underwood, who had a fantastic night of predicting. All my predictors are doing very well. Ryan Underwood did very well. I believe he went 11-2 at the last show. Either way, check out all the predictors. Martin Peterson, of course, Josh Harper doing very well as well. Please come vote. It's been a long stretch. We get an extra week off between this event and the next event. I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you as always. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions.